tape. Here's a tape, and this is a sync sound. It goes bow because it's synced. It's the filter envelope goes to frequency 1, so frequency 1 goes weird. It goes okay, and oscillator 1, oscillator 2 is quite plain. Okay, take that off, and oscillator 1 is, it's more of a triangle, isn't it? Let's make it more of a that's better, make it a little bit more pulsy, and then you can hear it with this one. This is with sync off, you've got a little bit of beats there, but apart from that, okay, less beats now because I've just tiddled around with the fine. There's some beats there, there's still a little bit of beats. Okay, now, so we've got a sensible oscillator 1, right, so with nothing, so let's just put it on hold. Sensible oscillator 1, sensible oscillator 2, and there's a sub-octave. Actually, let's take hold off. It's not really that loud, the sub-octave. You can hear that, can't you? Let's go an octave up, okay? And then the other two are here. Right. Take the sub-octave out. So sub-octave out, sub-octave in. Plainly works in non-sync mode. What about in sync mode? Right, sub-octave out. Let's try oscillator 2, well, oscillator 1 for a start. Let's try nothing. Right, oscillator 1, oscillator 2. I should press them 6 times to make sure that oscillator 1 again. Right, sub-octave. All together. Right, sub-octave works on all 6 voices. Without sync, oh, what crappy playing. Right, okay. Let's put the frequency mod back on again. Ooh, you bugger. Let's turn the sub-octave. Well, I've messed around with the sound a bit actually. I have messed around with the sound. That sounds really weird. Yeah, because I changed the fine. And I might have altered something else, I altered the kind of wave. But you see the point, I was piddling around with the waves and the pulse width and stuff like that, so it's not going to sound the same, but right. You can't actually hear the sub-octave much on the actual sound. Let's turn the... There is the sub-octave, and there is the rest of it. Okay, without the sync on, here's the sub-octave. Oh, the sub-octave is being messed around with this frequency thing, frequency mod. Let's turn that off. Okay, and the others. Right, that works perfectly, right? On a sync sound. I don't know about another sync. These are sort of the Prophet-5 sounds, and I'm surprised. Everybody goes, oh, there's all Prophet sounds with loads of sync sounds, and not actually that many sync. Oh, there's another one. Don't know what this is doing, I don't really care. Let's just... Okay, let's take the sync off. Okay, oscillator 1 is on F3 or something. Oh, something like that. Let's make it on F3 anyway. And this one is obviously on C2. It's a little bit too sensitive. Hang on. That's oscillator 2. Right, and oscillator 1. Both together. Sub-octave. Oh, obviously the sub-octave is there. And it's slave to oscillator 2, presume. No, it's not. It's slave to oscillator 1, isn't it? Yeah, I've no idea actually where the sub-octave. Slave to oscillator 1, isn't it? By the look of it. Yeah, twit. It's pointing to there. So you've got the actual sub-octave. You've got oscillator 1. You've got oscillator 2 tuned to something different. Okay. And then all together they're completely consistent. Right. Oh. Put some D delay on that. Put some heavy... I'm messing around now. Put some heavy bucket brigade on that. Well, maybe not that much. I like that. See, knowing things work, you can just go straight to making sounds, yeah? Okay, so if I put the sync back on, it's going to sound different. No effects. Okay, here's the sub-osc. Here's oscillator 1. Oscillator 2. Right. Because it's synced, because oscillator 1 and 2 are synced now, and so the sub-octave is also synced. Right. Because it's slave to oscillator 2, I guess. Well, actually. But it's still an octave below. Is it? It isn't, is it? It's the same damn frequency. Oh no, hang on, I've got oscillator 2. Let's have nothing on now. Right. Oscillator 1 is the same. Oh, strange. Oscillator 1 is no longer, the sub-octave is no longer a sub-octave, is it? I know why, because this was at a different frequency before. This was at an F. Okay. Let's make it a silly note, like a B. Okay. What about, let's try oscillator 1 now without sync. That's a sub-octave. See, it's an octave below, but when you introduce sync, it sort of pulls oscillator 1. It might pull the sub-octave in as well. I'm not really sure. I didn't think it did that last time. It probably depends what the relative tunings are or something like that. But at least it made sense until I tried this sound. Oh heck, let's just try, let's go for 927, for heaven's sake. Right, let's start again. Nothing, right? Os 1. Os 2. Sub-octave. With sync on. The sub-octave is the same. It's not a sub-octave anymore. How really odd. But if I take sync off, then oscillator 2, which is the master, is the same. That's nice. Ooh. Little bit of mod there. Right, okay. Oscillator 2, oscillator 1 as well. Oh, it's a third now. And the sub-octave is an octave below. So with them all, but they're very consistent. Right. Oh dear, let's put sync on. I'm not really sure why the sub-octave on this one now is not an octave below. It's the same. There's OSC 1 and there's a sub. Oh, actually no it isn't, you see. It's working now. Right. And then OSC 2. So that's behaving itself fine. I don't know what I did last time. Let's just assume it's behaving itself fine. Okay, that's with the sub-octave on. And without it on, yeah, there's obviously something. That's strange. They appear to all be the same frequency now. Let's do it again. Right. Sub. Oops. No, that's the same, isn't it, in sync mode? So the sub-octave seems to get slave to oscillator 2 in sync mode. Perhaps. But not always. I'm not really sure about that. But putting a sub-octave makes it fatter, whereas actually on the OB6 it just messes around. It just plays on 2 voices and not on the other voices. Let's try another, see if we can find another sync setup. That's the one I had before. 9, 1, 2, 3. Oh dear. Okay, let's just take the sync off and see what everything is. Take these all down to 0. Right. Oscillator 1. Oh, frequency mod. Polymod. Right, that's oscillator 1. Sub-octave. This is with sync off. Makes a lot of sense. Oscillator 2. Different. Right, they're all in now. Sync on. They all sound in with each other actually. Oscillator 1. Oscillator 2. Sub-octave. Oh, the sub-octave slave to oscillator 2 again, isn't it? Whereas if you take that off, it's down. I mean, it makes sense. If the sub-octave gets slave to oscillator 2 on sync, I mean, either it does or it doesn't. It might have just been because I had a different timbre of the wave for the sub-os is a triangle, so it sounds more fundamentally. So, okay, the sub-osc and oscillator 1 both seem to slave to oscillator 2 on sync, whereas off sync they don't. They're all independent. We've got 3 different frequencies in there. But the sub-octave is always going to be an octave below oscillator 1, whatever oscillator 2 is doing. Then when you sync them, they all come into oscillator 2's domain, let's say. They're all the same pretty much. But they all play all the time. It's very consistent, unlike the OB6 where your two voices it plays the sub-os and the others it doesn't, which is a pain in the bum.